Welcome to Bounce Back Stronger, the podcast that explores ways to find peace and purpose no matter what happens. I'm your host, Donna Ferris, and today our guest is Julie Wright, who is an expert in an activity we all struggle with from time to time. What is that activity? Sleep. A little about Julie. Julie is the visionary founder of We Sleep, a pioneering company dedicated to assisting individuals and businesses in navigating the challenges of poor sleep and insomnia. Julie's journey into the world of sleep began with a simple but profound motto: sleep and your dreams will come true. With this guiding principle, she has dedicated her life to helping others unlock the power of restorative sleep, believing that it holds the key to realizing our fullest potential. Drawing from her vast expertise and the wisdom distilled in her groundbreaking book, The Natural Sleeper, Julie is here today to share invaluable insights, practical tips, and transformative techniques to help us all reclaim our nights and awaken refreshed, rejuvenated, and ready to embrace each day with vitality and purpose. It's so good to be with you, Julie. Thank you so much for joining us. I look so forward to learning from you today.
Thanks for having me. Like whatever opportunity I have to work with people to spread the word, about sleep is just like a passion for me. So it's really my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So maybe we just start right off. What is the one thing that you wish everyone knew about sleep?
The one thing that I want people to know is that it's an incredibly complex process, or activity in a way, because actually when we sleep, we're actually quite active. The brain and the body does a ton of stuff, like recovering, rejuvenating, memorizing, problem solving, creating. And so it looks so simple to watch someone fall asleep, right? It seems so easy, but actually it's not easy for everyone. And so there's about a third of the population on this planet, especially in Western civilizations and cultures, but who struggle with sleeping well, and it's just
Oh,
become an increasing issue, impacted people, not only adults, children and teenagers as well. I'm thrilled that people are paying more attention to sleep. And even though it looks simple, it's quite complex, but there's so many ways to achieve poor sleep when we suffer from, chronic insomnia. And that's what
mhm.
I'm here to say. I'm here to say, actually, you have more control than you think over how well you sleep. And there are now, there's a lot of information, and support if you need it.
Oh, that's great. And I have read your book, The Natural Born Sleeper, and I love it. And one of the things I really love about that book is that your approach is open. You don't kind of
Hmm.
prescribe, which I think a lot of times it feels, at least for me, when somebody comes in and says, you have to do these 14 things and then you'll be great.
Hmm.
And there are certain things, and I'll ask that later, what really that can really be helpful.
Hmm.
But you come at it like there's like a wheel in the front that says, if you're kind of these things and that those
Yes.
things, I love it. I don't know if you have it there, but I think it'd be
Yes, I
really
do.
interesting for people to see.
Yes, I'm going to show it quickly, and I'll explain how I got to this. So basically, yeah, I think it's page 10. So I don't know if
Yeah.
you can see. I mean, I have my
Yeah.
bookmarks. This page 10 and 12, which are charts, because the what got me here doing this and sleep coaching is because I had the issue with sleeping myself, about, I think it was about 15 years ago. And I started, like most people, going to the primary care physician, or GP as we call it in England, and I was prescribed sleeping pills. And actually, it really didn't suit me at all. Like I felt, first of all, I had reactions to it. I was hyperactive instead of sleepy. Don't ask me
Uh,
why. And and I would feel really groggy during the day. And anyway, sleeping pills are only to be used for a short period of time, except if you go through a traumatic experience, like perhaps, the loss of someone you love. You could use it for a few weeks. But taking sleeping pills on a permanent basis or chronic basis is not a good idea. And that kind of ties to something else you were asking me about, what I want people to know about sleep is that, we were built with an internal pharmacy that has all the natural chemicals and I mean neurotransmitters and all sorts of hormones and organs and a brain that organizes it all for you. Like there's a
Mm.
chief sleep operator or orchestrator or officer, whatever you name it, inside your brain that is taking care of it for you. So you technically, if you can reconnect with your natural ability to sleep, that's the best way, and it's possible. So what was happening is that I started trying all these things because I didn't want to take a sleeping pill. And I tried many, many things. And this is kind of how I started gathering my knowledge. And I surrounded myself with therapists or, doctors, researchers, academics, learned from them. And then there were all these approaches and solutions which are natural, meaning not taking medication, or at least not chemical. I'm trying to make a difference, I guess, between, for example, herbal remedies and things like that, which is also a sort of medicine. But it's like, how do you organize all these solutions in a way that makes sense? So that's how I did these charts, and I have two of them, and looking at helping people use this chart to work out what would be best for them, because we're all different, in terms of personality and culture and the things that resonate with us. For example, some people might be really pragmatic and they need science, to back up their decisions. Other people might be more intuitive, a little bit more into energetic and sort of spiritual type of approaches. They don't even want to hear about science. And then some people want immediate results. Like they don't have time, it's got to get fixed. Some people are more patient and can sort of work more, in the long term. Some people might be more self-care and then they just want to take care of themselves, and others need a professional or a coach, sorry, by their side to create the changes, and work with someone, and having that assistance. So yeah, and I basically organized it that way around professional support versus self-care, being intuitive versus pragmatic, and also, is the issue physical, physiological, or psychological?
Mhm.
And also, where do all these solutions? And I thought it was, all these criteria that I just shared was a way for me to present it to the world, saying, who are you? What would work for you? And remember, everyone's different. So solutions and the toolkit that you build, for your sleep will be different from one person to the next. It will also be different from one night to the next,
Mm.
because every day is different and every night will be different as well. We prepare for sleep, we could cultivate sleep mostly by the choices we make during our days. So I always say days are more important than nights. Like if you want to sleep well, pay attention to the choices you make and the events and whatever happens in your day, because this is what will dictate how good sleep you will get, the quality, and also the duration.
So I love that. And I want to just say 2 seconds is that I had always poo-pooed dream catchers until I read your book. And then I bought one and I sleep very well. So
Interesting.
it's really interesting. I mean,
Hmm.
and I think it was, you gave me permission, I think, in a way to kind of explore new things, which is one of the things I really recommend, for folks to read this book, because I think it takes the thing that feels so far from us into our own hands and allows us to explore solutions that we may just have been closed off to beforehand. Uh,
Yes, and when I wrote this book, so it's called The Natural Sleeper, it was really about, I'm not taking sides, I'm not telling you what to do, I'm saying here are all the things. But first, there's an introduction about how we sleep, why we sleep, what happens while we sleep. And it's important to understand, because once you understand the physiology and the sort of biological processes that take place, it helps you understand why solutions work, and so that they tap into mind and body. So basically, I wanted to just lay it all out without taking positions for one thing over the other or saying that's good, that's not good. I just tried to make a sort of guide with all the different solutions, and then it's up to you to decide what works for you. Or maybe have a bit of curiosity around, certain things like what you did, which is, oh, let me just try it out, see what happens. This has happened a lot to me in coaching with men, because men tend to be more pragmatic and they're just not too sure how, for example, emotional freedom therapy
mm,
works. EFT, I don't know
mhm.
if you've heard of it, and it's
I
tapping.
have. Yeah,
You
no, I
have
it helped me through a traumatic situation that I had to recover from. It was life-changing.
Yes, and it's interesting because it's about tapping on certain points, on our bodies and faces and head, which helps you, yes, get over trauma. It's also actually, I recommend it for sleep as well, for
Mm,
people who are very anxious and stressed, and it could be a really good one. Or for example, if you're preparing for a big event, say you have a big presentation or a pitch or I don't know, anything that could make you a bit, feel like you have you're nerve-wracked in a way. And tapping is really good for that as well. Most guys are like, oh, what's this thing? What's up with like tapping and talking? And then when they try it and they see that it works, even for guys, that's really quite a magical moment because yes, you just
mhm.
have to have an open mind, but you have to let your intuition guide you, perhaps, or read information if you want hard facts, if you want to see research and make your decision that way. That's another approach. I'm completely agnostic. What works for you works for me.
I think it's really helpful. I think some of the best books on subjects are allowing you to explore and figure out
Hmm.
your own way. And this certainly does that. Let's identify, if you can, two or three things that everybody could do to improve their sleep. Maybe it's, something during the day or whatever, but I think that's a really good idea, is the idea that the day is really what's going to bring your
Hmm.
night, success. But yeah, please share, maybe two or three things that we all can do.
Yes, right. Because it could be a whole list. In fact, there's a book about it. So, like, of course, and there's many books about sleep as well. So there's just a lot of things. I mean, for me, the first thing is to anchor your wake up time. So, and you'll hear a lot of, sleep professionals talk about that. And what that means is that you should wake up at the same time every day, no matter how late you went to bed, and hopefully not too late if you need a lot of sleep. And again, sleep needs are different from one person to the next. The
Mm.
range is between 4 hours a night to 10 hours a night, with the majority falling into sort of like 7, 8 hours, but some people might need more and some people might need less. So waking up at the same time every day, including weekends, which is the hard one because
Mm-hmm.
everyone wants to sleep in, on
Mm-hmm.
Saturdays and Sundays. But if you do that, you help regulate your circadian rhythm, which dictates all the activity that happens within your body and your brain to prepare you for sleep. Once you start having erratic sleep schedule, you really confuse your brain and it doesn't know which neurochemicals to release when. It just gets confused. And so then this is when you got dysregulation, in terms of hormonal releases or neurochemical releases as well. So anchoring your morning, your wake up time. Then the second most important thing is your exposure to light, specifically daylight, specifically outside, outdoor. As humans, first of all, we're supposed to be asleep by night for the most of us, and active by day. And active by day, if you think about, evolution of humankind, it was about hunting and gathering outdoors, and we weren't meant to work all day in front of a computer. We were built to be outside and look for shelter at night, in a sort of a dark, safe, quiet place with a temperature that's reasonable, not too cold, not too hot. And so while we were outside, in the daylight, we were exposed to natural daylight and the sun, and it just helps you produce for example, melatonin, just to begin with. So with vitamin D, which you get from exposure to light through your skin, and certain things that you eat, you start producing serotonin, which is the happy hormone also, by the way, which then transforms into melatonin and is released by your brain, with your pineal gland. And that process needs to be quite regular, which is
Mm.
why when you travel and you experience jet lag, it's just so painful to go through until you can regulate and readjust to the day night cycles, which really helps with that. So if you anchor your time and you expose yourself to daylight outside, so go for a walk or maybe a run or sit on your balcony, even if you feel just too lazy to go for a walk or run, just at least sit outside if you can. And then the third thing And there's many other things, believe me,
There's a whole
that could
bunch.
be done. Yes, there's a whole
Yeah.
bunch. But it's really also giving yourself the opportunity to sleep.
Mm.
People sacrifice sleep. They sacrifice sleep, putting it last, and I'm hearing things like, I'll sleep when I die, sleep is for the wicked, or don't sleep, or you sort of want to show that you're a superhero by not
Mhm.
needing more sleep. If you give yourself the opportunity to sleep, which is go to bed at a reasonable time for you, again, it'll be different for different people, and you combine that with a regular circadian rhythm, and as long as your sleep hygiene is decent, which it is for most people, it's not that bad. These are probably the three most important thing in my view. And then there's a long tail end, which as a coach, I would work with the person to understand what's happening in their lives and what improvements they could make. And then there's other tweaks that you can do. But at least if you could do these three simple things, that you should see already a difference.
And what's great about them is they're all in your control.
Hmm. It's a
It
very good point.
and they're all self-care. They're decisions that you make for yourself that are
Hmm.
self-care. Yeah. I love that. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about some of the like sound therapy and herbal remedies that you might recommend. I think it would be
Hmm.
interesting to kind of delve a little bit into that. Sorry for any of the pragmatic folks that don't want to hear but my audience is I think a little bit more, tipped to that. So let's spend a little
Okay.
time there, please.
Yes, yes. And if you want a bit of science, I still cover it in my book, or, whoever's watching can reach out with questions. I can also
Well,
explain.
well, maybe we do
Um,
science first. We can do science first. We have time to do both. So we can do science first and then holistic if you want. I mean, I think
oh,
I
no, no,
think
no,
they're
I don't
both,
mind.
yeah.
Yeah, the thing is they work together. Like
Yeah.
so for example, what I just talked about around the circadian rhythm, around exposure to light, producing your own melatonin, that's already some science. I mean, obviously it's very high level. There's also things, so maybe I'll add understanding sleep cycles as well. So the majority of scientists have been debating about, should you sleep in sort of continuous sleep, or is it okay to sleep in phases, like, but let's say 3-4 hours, wake up, and then, because there's a lot of stuff that's come out in the press about that. And the majority settles on, no, actually, it's better to have continuing sleep. We all wake up during the night for very, very short periods of time, like maybe a few seconds to a few minutes, and then we fall back asleep. This happens. When you should start being concerned is if you really can't fall back asleep after, say, 15 minutes. And this is also evolutionary as well. And it was a way of, at least this is the theory from scientists, that we would wake up just to be aware that there was no looming danger about to attack the tribe or anything like that. And if everything was calm and quiet, fall back asleep. And so we go through the different stages. What I want people to know is that every stage of sleep, whether it's deep, light, or REM, rapid eye movement sleep, where you spend most time dreaming. Actually, there's some findings that we dream in other stages as well, but the majority would be in REM sleep. Each of these cycles are as important as each other. It's not just deep sleep that's important. Deep sleep, yes, and that's the one where you're really knocked out. You can't really, it's difficult to wake up from deep sleep. And this is a time where you're sort of repairing, and healing, growing as well. So it's a very important, and this is the type of sleep that makes you feel refreshed. But light sleep and REM sleep are also really important for your physical and mental health as well. Processing data, information, learning skills, creative also, waking up with solutions somehow, something that you can work out the day before you wake up and ta-da, it just came to you, because your brain keeps working while you are asleep, or seemingly asleep. So it's important to understand that every cycle works and is important, and also that ideally you would sleep continuously as opposed to choppy sleep, so that the way the body works is that it spends most of the time in deep sleep at the beginning of your sleep, and then it cycles through light REMs and deep light REM sleep. And so as you go towards the morning, you start dreaming more and more because the body spends more time. It prioritizes repair, healing, recovery, and then it moves towards mental health, you know. And dreams are so important. They help you stay sane. I'm saying sort of mentally sane, processing emotions, working through difficulties perhaps of the day, preparing you for what's ahead. So it's sort of like a balance between mental and physical health that takes place throughout the night. So ideally, if you sleep continuously, that would help your body deal with all of that. So that's
That
probably where I'll stop on the science, but there's much more.
that is really fascinating because
hmm
it explains a lot. Because if you're going through difficult times, you kind of shorten your sleep because you can't sleep or whatever. But that's probably the most important time that you needed was to sleep, right? For your
Yes,
mental health.
for your mental health. I mean, you know that sleep deprivation is a torture method, right? Like, so that if you really want to drive
Oh my
someone
gosh.
crazy or brainwash them or hurt them, try stopping them from sleeping. I mean, it's just a really this is how you know how important it is. If you're deprived of food, not water, but food, you can kind of go for a while. If you don't exercise, even for a year or more or at all, you know, you might still live. If you don't sleep, what happens? It's just impossible. It's just something we need, absolutely.
That was so helpful, the science.
hmm
And I've never made that connection with mental health. So that was
hmm
revelatory for me. How about the holistic side? So the
Yeah.
sound and the other aspects, the dream catchers,
And
hit that.
you're asking the right person because I am super pragmatic. First of all, if it can't be proven, I don't know if I'm going to even believe it or pay attention, like that's my nature. I'm very pragmatic. I need facts. I need proof. And over the years, when certain things just don't work as well for me, and for me it was pills, prescription medicine, and then people start telling you, oh, you should try this, you should try that, and how about this, and how about that. And then I had actually was a business coach, an executive coach who I was working with, who started to just talked about it, and then he introduced me to, well, it was Chinese medicine. At the same time, other things started appearing. We were talking earlier about just going with the flow, which is also not something I was used to because I'm a planner. But then through suggestions and also encounters, that I've had, I started opening myself to different approaches. So traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda from India, thousands of years, it has been practiced for a very long time. They have a completely different approach than we do, compared to Western medicine. And I thought, well, I'm not going to lose much by giving it a try. And it's probably the two types of Eastern medicines, Asian medicines that I've experimented with. And I was absolutely shocked about the results and how I felt. And even though when I would read about it, it would sound a bit weird, but then some things did make sense. And then I started feeling something. And when you sort of start practicing mindfulness, for example, or meditation, you start feeling it much more because you are neutralizing external stimulation and you're just with yourself. And all of a sudden, a lot of it made sense. So, and then that's how I started opening the beautiful Pandora's box of, in a positive way, of all the great things that you can try and see what works. So yes, sound therapy, I'm a really, really big fan of. For some people, it might be listening to an audiobook or a podcast. For some people, it might be a certain type of sound. So a lot of people have heard of white noise, especially with children. White noise machines, it's something that parents use frequently. But then I started discovering other sounds, brown noise, pink noise, binaural beats, and all of these sounds, by the way, if you are on a music service like Spotify or even others, you can just Google and find a lot of that. It's available out there and see what works for you. In my workshops, I sound sample so that people can see what works for them. And for example, I'll switch on the sound of the rain. The rain works really well for me. It's so relaxing and I could really sleep well. For some people, it's just basically horror. It's like, no, stop it right away. I just can't stand that sound, and maybe birds might be something that works better for them. I prefer brown noise over white noise because brown noise, it's the type of sound you hear when you're on a plane. That sort of buzz that's quite deep and low, and before you know it, a lot of people are asleep. it's because also of that sound and sort of, how it works and the frequencies that are emitted. And so you just have to find what's right for you. And so this was on the sound side. I talked about traditional Chinese medicine, a mixture of herbal remedies, but also acupuncture. And I found that acupuncture worked really, really well for me. And then I discovered acupressure, which is basically activating the same points, but you can do this yourself and you could do it at home. And in my workshops, I demonstrate the different points that work. And this is something you can do for yourself at home. And if it's not enough, then by all means, go to your acupuncturist. So you could do both. Yeah, and Ayurveda I talked about, so that's also quite elaborative as well with, well, definitely herbal remedies and a nutritional program, and also yoga, and also acupressure as well. It's funny because the Chinese and the Indians have the same points, which I always found pretty interesting. So yeah, it's just interesting to see the commonalities. So these are just a few, and honestly, my book is a couple hundred pages of all the other thing that exists. But ask me if there's one in particular you're interested in. I'm happy to tell you my thoughts on it when it comes to sleep.
Yeah, I think you've hit them well, and I think one of the things that I was thinking about going back to EFT, the emotional freedom technique, that's an acupressure, it's a tapping, but it's in the line of all of the things that you were talking about there with acupressure and acupuncture. So I think
Absolutely.
and for those that are afraid of needles like me, it was a good one for
Yes.
me because I could still kind of access the
Hmm.
benefits without having to do something that would, make me never sleep, to be honest. I wonder, besides picking up the book, which I think everybody should, and I'll have the links in the show notes, what's one last thing maybe you would like to share with the audience that I missed asking about?
Oh gosh, what you've missed. Perhaps we should talk about breath and breath work because it's really
Yes.
quite a popular one alongside mindfulness and meditation. So breath and breath work is becoming more and more popular. And if you gave me four things to do, remember how I said the three things and it would be a fourth one, that would be the one, which is how breathing is healing, and it's absolutely true. So when someone has a panic attack, therapists would work with that person on certain breathing patterns to calm down the panic. Equally, breath work is super effective with falling asleep, either even in the middle of the night. So my go-to techniques are, so you basically breathe, there's different patterns. Count for 4 and inhale, exhale for 4, or inhale for 4, hold for 7, and exhale for 8. And you do this over and over. And there's other techniques, like for example, pranayama in yoga, it's nostril breathing, and you sort of alternate from between the left and the right. Um, because another very important part of us and our body to fall asleep well is our central nervous system, and in particular the vagus nerve, which runs from the back of the throat to the pit of your stomach. And it's a magic nerve. It's basically connected to most organs in our body, and breathing slowly activates it in a way that it helps you relax. And often that's all you need to fall asleep if you have the right technique. So breathing, the important one.
And that one is really good for falling back to sleep too,
Hmm.
right? It's a great way to meditate quickly with a breathing practice to kind of get yourself back to sleep too, right?
Exactly, exactly. Because a lot of people don't have, most people don't have an issue falling asleep at the beginning of the night. In fact, if you fall asleep in less than 5 minutes, or if you fall asleep immediately, like some people say, I hit the pillow and I'm, yeah, knocked out. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're sleeping. And in fact, it could be a sign of sleep deprivation. It should take about 10 to 15 minutes to fall asleep if you have regular good sleep. So most people fall asleep quickly, but wake up in the night and do not know how to fall back asleep. So breath work is great. And also progressive muscular relaxation, which is tensing and relaxing your body, almost scanning through the top of your head to your toes or vice versa. I'm going to be doing more of that on social media actually, because I want to show people, and I think I'm going to do some lives, and I just want people to practice so they can see how it works.
And that's great. Yeah, another one that I've been doing recently, and it'd be interesting to know what you think about it, but is a counting your blessings kind of thing because it
Mm,
deregulates your nervous system because a lot of times, at least for me, I wake up and then I start ruminating
Hmm.
and it just cuts it off because I can start to kind of, oh, and then I throw in a little bit of the meditation, which is, if I'm thinking about somebody and they might be difficult, I will go, may they be happy, may they be healthy, may they
Hmm.
be safe, may they live with ease, which cuts that off
Hmm.
because it stops kind of that flow of mind chatter. I don't know if that's anything that
Yes, and
you,
negative
those
thinking
practices.
or
Yeah.
fearful thinking. We
Yeah.
can't sleep well if we don't feel safe,
Yeah.
so it's safe for ourselves, for our children, for people around the world. Talked about is the happiness meditation. I've heard it as called as metta,
Yeah.
to basically wish, well, and having a positive. Absolutely. I mean, we didn't even talk about all the mind techniques, but
Yeah.
yes, as a sleep coach, also, I would work with people on a routine. And it sounds like you're building your own toolkit, which is great. So, of the tools that work for them, the practices that work for them, and around the mind and ruminating and worrying and feeling anxious about it, yes, there's a lot of things you can do before going to sleep. Some people, it might be journaling. What you
Hmm.
expressed today was gratitude, and appreciation. So it flips your thinking. You do really have to draw a line under your day, and just sort of work and prepare and not go to sleep without having planned what you're going to do the next day, because a lot of people might worry and then they're awake and then they can't fall back asleep. So there's definitely a lot of mind and body relaxation practices and exercises and cognitive behavioral therapeutic type of approaches, which are really helpful. The main thing is to avoid stimulation as you are in bed or going to bed. And stimulation, like anything from doing something addictive, like maybe binge watching TV or video gaming or exercising really intensively or
Hmm.
having an argument with someone close to you, all these things will put you in an alert mode. And if you are in alert mode and not in safety mode, you will find it difficult. You might fall asleep quickly, but you wake up because your stress levels and stress hormones are high. And so you won't sleep well.
And again, all in your control. Even in an
Yes.
argument, you can walk away from, believe it or not. We all can do it in most cases, unless you're unsafe for some reason. You can definitely walk away from it.
Or
So,
defer it. Have the
yeah.
argument in the next
Hey,
day
can we do
during
this
the
tomorrow?
day.
Can
Yes,
we do this
exactly.
tomorrow? I'll
Oh,
put it
I
on my
do that.
list. I do. I do
Exactly.
too. I'm like, I don't really think this is a good time. It's been
Hmm.
so good to be with you and to learn from you today. And maybe just share the name of the book again and then
Yes.
your social media so that people can find you for these reels and TikToks you're
Yep.
going to be
So
doing.
the book is The Natural Sleeper.
Perfect.
I think it doesn't read, it reads opposite, but
No,
anyway.
it reads fine here. I hope it
Oh,
will in the
Sonia,
in
yes.
yeah, it's good.
Okay. It's also available in French and in Portuguese if you have
Nice.
international listeners. The social is at We Sleep UK, so WESLEEP UK. So it's the website www.wesleep.co.uk if you want to get in touch.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the time with you today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to talk about this and talk about it with you, and hopefully it'll help. And let me know, like, if you've picked up what actually I'd be interested to know. So what are the things that you're going to do starting hopefully tonight or this week
M-
differently than you have in the past
Me,
to improve your sleep? Yes.
I think the day, the idea of thinking about my day differently and
Mm-hmm.
planning for my sleep, because I love sleep. One of the reasons I got sober was because I heard and I understood from practitioners that drinking was causing trouble with my sleep. So
Mm-hmm.
I love sleep. It's like the number one thing that keeps me sober. But I don't think enough about my day and the
Mm-hmm.
stimulus during the day. I mean, I watch my
Mm-hmm.
caffeine intake, but I don't think about the activity very much.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something I'm really going to sit with and have a think about, right? Is how my day activities and and the things I allow during my day, how they're impacting my sleep. I think it'll be a good one for me to take away.
Sounds great. Excellent. Let me know how you get on.
I will. I will.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.